It's a stormy day. Rain drives in sheets, and thunder rumbles over the far ridge. You regret coming for this walk along the foot of Pike's Peak, but then again, you regret so much about your decisions. Before you can take your regrets any wider, you turn off at a sign for the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside, you find that the raucous conversation turns to the mistakes they all have made as well. This makes you feel better, in a weird way. In the corner table, by the fire, are three people. One of them is me, Matt Mellema, your co-host. So welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. For those of you who don't know, and you should know by now, but the Anselm Society is a coalition of churches throughout the Front Range of Colorado dedicated merely to the renaissance of the Christian imagination. So we have lots of programs, we have an annual conference, all sorts of content, including two other podcasts you should go check out. If you want to find out more about us, go to anselmsociety.org. And once you go there, you can find a way to become a patron of this podcast. What? So if you wanted to donate, I mean, you could. That sounds great. And also, if you wanted to get on iTunes and rate and review and all that other stuff, I think that'd be a nice thing. I don't want to tell you what to do, whatever. But anyway, now that I've established all that, we have a topic that actually goes back to our latest conference, which was this past spring, the Imagination Redeemed Conference. And for that, I want to introduce our two guests, but I'll start with the guest. First one, Teressa Mahoney. And Teressa, say hello to everybody, and I'm introducing you first because this was your idea.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. And you suggested this to me like in April, and now it's July, and you see, I finally did get around to doing it. I'm sort of like a bureaucracy or something. I work just very slowly.
You're a bureaucracy unto yourself.
It's just the right time for this.
So, Teressa, why don't you tell us all a little bit about you? You have been on the show before, but maybe reintroduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what kind of art you do.
Okay. I live in Colorado, not at the foot of Pike's Peak, but not too far away. I have a view of Pike's Peak.
You're close enough, yeah.
And I write songs, and I play guitar and piano, and I sing them. So I call myself a singer-songwriter.
Well, I mean, you write songs, you sing them, so I think that's a pretty apt thing.
It's so logical.
I think by definition, you are a singer-songwriter. And our other guest is Mandy. Mandy, same thing. You've been on the show before, but tell us a little bit about you and your art.
Well, it's Mandy Houk, in case you're forgetting how to say my last name. I am a writer. I write novels, and I try to write short stories, but they're actually harder, and articles and things like that. All right. I don't sing.
Well, you do. It's just I'm
do.
Guessing people don't like I sing. It's just nobody would pay to hear me sing.
No one would pay to hear me.
People pay Teressa money to hear her sing, which is that's really what separates it. But anyway,
it is.
So
Isn't
Teressa,
that sad though? The money thing. I hate that.
I'm sorry. Let me put this way. People would go out of their way to listen to Teressa sing. People would go out of their way to not hear me sing. In fact, I've had my 2-year-old just tell me when he overhears me,
please stop.
"Oh, Daddy, stop, Daddy." But that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, it is.
So, Teressa, why don't you tell us about this topic and what made you suggest it?
Okay. So I feel like in the last 5 years or so, I have kind of gone through a revolution in my thinking and the way I see God and the way I view my Christianity, really all of life. I guess maybe I'm a little young for a midlife crisis, but something like that. I think the more I talk to different people, the more I just gravitate towards people who are in that same sort of transformation. But I keep hearing so many people say, "Oh my gosh, I always used to think blah, 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 and now I think blah, blah, blah." And I love that we are sort of open to change in a way that I haven't seen the church be in my experience. And so I want to talk about it.
All right. So, yeah, I'm guessing this will be in the show title since I write the show titles. But so this will be Things I No Longer Believe. And especially, since we're at the Believe to See pub table, we'll give them sort of a arts and faith twist to make sure that they involve there. But we can go bigger, too, seeing how things go. And we have each dutifully prepared some things that we did believe at one point of our lives, but no longer do, and we'll discuss them. And I get the feeling a lot of listeners will, I hope they'll resonate with a lot of the ones I wrote, or else that'll be bad for my self-esteem. But Teresa, since you, once again, this idea came from your brain, why don't you kick us off? What is the first idea that you no longer believe?
So what I used to think is self-care is selfish. And now I have switched around my thinking in a lot of ways, and I've come so far away from that I feel now that busyness can be, not that it always is, but it can be a form of idolatry, where you find yourself so indispensable that to take a break would be not something that you would feel comfortable doing.
So have you been eavesdropping? Sorry. I'm an Enneagram 2. Sorry to bring up the Enneagram. But the indispensable is my disease. Like, I think that is the way I roll. Like, I have to do this so I've just been learning that too. I'm still learning that. You're
same thing. So do you think that too? Have you changed your thinking about self-care and that it's not as selfish?
I'm working on it. But my family is a very what did you do today? How much did you get done today? Kind of my upbringing, my family of origin. And so that's, first of all, my Enneagram 2 just thinks I have to help whoever needs help. But then also you add on to that this productivity being the goal of every single day. And it's still hard for me to really find the line between when am I being productive because I need to be, and when is it a pride thing, and when is rest laziness, and when is it self-care?
Yeah.
So this is good. But sorry, Matt, I interrupted the host. I'm never going to be invited back.
Well, we're all co-hosts here. It's a very egalitarian table. But so my question, I guess, for both of you is: are both of you the type where actually Danielle is this type, and we've been talking about this too, where when somebody asks her to do something, and people ask her to do things a lot, where she feels obligated, yes, I will do it, I will be very responsible with it, I'll take ownership, and I'll do a great job. I'm guessing those are the knee-jerk reactions of both of you, and to some extent as well. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think learning to say no is the thing, because I think if you say yes, then you're obligated to do a great job and take ownership. Yes. If you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So it's to think of it in terms of, what do I have to give up to give you a clean yes? Oh, that's the other thing I've learned this year. My friend Lori taught me the concept of a clean yes, which is my favorite thing ever. So I have been disciplining myself to not give yeses that are dirty. Not yes, but I don't really want to. Or I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to be resentful. Only say yes, clean yes.
We've been teaching that the last few years, I think. But I think one thing that we're lagging behind in culturally is for people to accept yes, because it's making it harder. That's great to tell everyone you have the right, say no if you can't help somewhere, but you got to train the other people who are doing the asking to accept no,
Oh, yeah.
Because a couple weeks ago at my church, I was leaving and someone asked me if I could go to this hike thing, which is all great, but I just didn't want to. So I said, I can't. And she said, oh, why are you going out of town? And I'm like, I can't. Don't make me lie. I don't wanna, So I think we really have to respect one another.
Boundaries.
So that because if you don't want someone who's saying yes out of obligation or pride to help with VBS or whatever it is you're asking for, you want willing, excited volunteers. So we need, as a culture and church culture too, especially, to be able to just let people say no. Easy for me to say. I'm not trying to staff the preschool.
Right, totally. But in the context of church especially, I feel like it makes a lot more sense if you aren't able to give a clean yes, then you have no business doing it. Because what if there was someone else who God is training up to do that position, who you, with your dirty yes, are taking it away from them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually think of an example. It's weird because I'm not generally a participator. I'm one of those people who, like in graduate school, I try to stay in the back row and not get noticed. Like, no, I don't want to join this club. No, I don't want to do this thing. Just leave me alone. But I remember a couple years ago, I got asked to do this thing at my church, and I wasn't sure I could do it, but I felt a little obligated, and it didn't go well. And I think part of it was because I wasn't in the right place to it, but I wasn't brave enough to say, no, I'm not at a good place for it, because I wanted to give the answer people would expect. So turned out when somebody else took over after I had to step aside, the program's doing great now because it's led by somebody who's passionate about it and wants to do it and had the resources for it. So by me trying to please people, I was actually doing a selfish thing, it turns out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen.
Great example.
Yeah, I was wondering how to because I think there's also sort of an artistic turn we can do here to your point of self-care, Teresa, because something I struggle with, and I'm sure we all do, because we all have things in our life we're busy with. So like for me, I have, young kids, have my job. So for me to carve out writing time, which I really enjoy doing, I feel I don't need to justify to any of you all why I enjoy doing my artistic stuff. But there's this little voice like, is this a selfish thing? Shouldn't you be doing something else more productive? Shouldn't you be, teaching your kids to read or something? So how do you all handle the self-care and with regards to your art balanced against your other obligations?
I don't have any good answers for that.
I know. Well, so for me, the problem for me, I used to be a teacher, and then I stepped aside from that because I realized that I was using that as my excuse for why I was still writing the book that will never get finished. And so I'm busy. So sort of along those same lines, it felt like I was taking time for myself to write. Oh, the horror. So fortunately, I've raised up two very bossy young women, and they're now 20 and 23. And they would see me struggle with that. And even as teenagers, they would be like, stop it. And they would tell me to go write. And so just getting permission from someone else helps. But nowadays, now that I'm writing and editing full time, it's actually kind of flipped because it is supposed to be my full-time job, even though I'm volunteering at this point, so to speak, no money. But I was realizing that when I edit for a client, I work all day long and I pump out the client's work. I just get it done. But for me, I just kind of meander. And so this last week, I wrote in my little day planner, edit for yourself like you're a client. And I did it. So for me, that's not really self-care like you're asking. But as far as the mindset of how to make sure you're taking care of your calling, there's different ways you have to kind of trick yourself into it. And so for me, it used to be about giving myself time to do what my heart wanted to do. But now it's like taking it to the next level of seriousness, treating myself like a client. Yeah, and it worked. Right. I sent my stuff to my agent. Woo woo.
That reminds me of the book, I know. The War of Art. Stephen Pressfield,
I have not heard that.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that book. I haven't read it though.
He says stuff like that. Okay. I'm not really good at remembering exact titles, but yeah, he talks about that, like what you were saying, schedule your own stuff as if you were the client, like you're a legitimate business person.
I'm real.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from someone, so I like how you guys are quoting books. I'm quoting a tweet, but it was from this guy who works his way up to being a successful writer. It's like, hey, if you want writing to be your job, then stop treating it like a hobby. It's like, oh, it kind of makes sense. Okay. No. You were profound today, Twitter. But, so that
every now and then.
Teresa, you did a great job of kicking us off for the things we no longer believe. And now, since I'm talking now, I get to direct the conversation. So, Mandy, what's your thing that you no longer believe?
Well, this is good that you're not where you can hit me. I used to think that hymns were boring. I used to think they were boring. And so I was used to. I know now I was wrong. But I was trying to think, why did you think that, terrible person? And first of all, I mean, I have to confess, I know we're a very Anglican organization, and I'm one of those little, Protestants over here. So, but I also think not to blame the music minister or anything, but I guess I am. We only sang like a handful of hymns, which really, if you think about the advantage of having this whole hymnal, and especially back when everyone could read music, why on earth would you go always to the same 10 or 20 hymns all year, you know? So I think anything that you recite over and over, you're going to not really pay attention that much to the words anymore. So I think because we were singing the same hymns so often, I was losing the meaning, especially when I probably started singing them before I knew what they meant. And so then it just sort of, it never sunk in. And then one time I was at a retreat, and when I was in college, and my good friends Lance and Carol were, they had just hunted through the hymnal, and they found this hymn called Let the Lower Lights Be Burning. I highly recommend y'all look it up. Teresa, you could do a cover. Let the Lower Lights Be Burning. And it just made me go, oh my gosh, there are treasures in the hymnal. And that just sort of opened the door. And then I started really listening to the hymns. And then I started going to a church that sang praise choruses, and I was really bored. I'm sorry. The early 90s, you know, 5 words, 3 chords, praise choruses, you know. So then I was really longing for the hymns. So I've come around, and I've seen
Don't it all just
hymns
go
now.
to show that you don't know what you've got till it's gone?
It's true.
So tell me this, Mandy. How old were you when you were in your peak anti-hymn phase? I'm trying to figure out if this is like an age thing or a generational thing. So I'm about to tell my side, but set me up. How old were you?
Okay. Did you just imply we're in different generations? I think we are, though.
What?
But oh well.
No, I mean,
I think you did. Okay. It's
what?
okay.
No.
Well, we are. Accept it. I was probably in, middle school. So middle school, high school. And then when I went to college and I first heard, I Love You, Lord, I just thought, now this is the kind of song. And then we sang it 400 times and then I was done. So you know which one I'm talking about. I'm not going to sing it. We already went over that. You don't want me to sing it. But anyway, yeah, I would say middle school, high school, probably.
Why, you know, I went through the same thing at the same age, thus implying that we are, in fact, in the same generation, Mandy. So I don't know what you were talking about. But so I remember going through in like middle school, high school is sort of a big thing where, you know, do we go to a church that just does the old-fashioned piano with the hymns, which is what I grew up in when I was a kid. Then some of the edgy, cool churches were like going to add drums and even an electric guitar. And I was like, ooh, are we sure we're going to do this? So I was, you know, trying to be cool and not knowing what to do. It was like, well, I'll be pro electric guitar. That'll be cool. And then I kind of went that direction. It was like, I like the old things now. And now I'm one of those Anglicans in Anselm. But Teresa, did you go through a similar progression, or were you going down a different emotional arc?
Okay, so I remember as a kid singing hymns, and you know how sometimes there would be like 5 verses, and you'd flip to that page in the hymn, and you were like, oh no, I hope we don't do all 5 verses.
Totally.
And then it was the same, you know, I got into like a youth group where there was like a band, and I was in the band, and I thought it was super cool. Then I guess kind of like you, Matt, I've come back. I'm like a pendulum. I'm swinging not all the way to hymns only, although I completely appreciate hymns. But what I'm sort of in a reaction to right now is the rock concert style worship that I just don't identify with.
Agreed. Yeah. I do think, I mean, Stuart Townend obviously is current. So when I say hymns, obviously I'm talking about old ones, but I really appreciate some of the newer ones today, like How Deep the Father's Love for Us is one of my favorite songs, hands down, hymn or not. But yeah, like you were saying, the performance kind of rubs me the wrong way. So.
Yeah, where people go to church like with the intention of watching a show and leaving it to the expert, and not with the intention of bringing a sacrifice of praise. It just seems like there's something wrong with that picture. And
Yes.
In my church right now, we're talking about it and we're having those conversations. Like, what should corporate worship look like for this body? What are our goals? What's our vision? How do we sort that out? And how do we accomplish it? So I'm right in the middle of a whole bunch of discussions about that topic.
Yeah, and something that's been kind of coming to me as we've been talking about this is how, like you said, Teresa, I feel like I've been swinging on a pendulum where I went through my phase when I was, young. It was like, come on, let's get rid of this piano. Let's be cool. Let's get the guitars and drums. And I went through this phase like, oh, these drums, just these wannabe rock stars singing all these, bland lyrics. Let's go back to the majesty of the old hymns. And then now, maybe I'll swing back again sometime. So I guess there's two things there. One, it seems like it's very easy to swing the pendulum too far in one direction in response, which is it's a normal human thing to do. I think something we should all watch for. And second, I find it very easy to fall into this sort of knee-jerk reaction of approaching the music presented to me at church through like a critic's lens, When I'm, in high school, it's like, oh, come on, guys, let's get with the times, guitars. But then when I go through the next phase, like, this rock band stuff is so insipid. Oh, I can see these lyrics are so dumb. I can see how dumb everything is. Luckily I can see much better than all these other people listening to it. So it's the recurring thing is me coming at it through like a critic's eye instead of trying to view it charitably and view it realizing, I'm not the ultimate goal of the songs, whatever we're singing. I think that segues into my first thing. So the first thing that I came up with for a thing I no longer believe, I still kind of believe it. Well, I believe it in my irrational part, but my rational brain knows better. But who knows who will win out. I always used to assume that I'll reach this point in my life when I'll have it figured out, where all these big problems that I was wrestling with as a young person, like, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll reach this sort of level of comfort in my job, dealing with people as a family's nurse. I'll have it figured out. I'll have my views. I'll be able to defend my views. And we'll be set. And now I'm seeing how fluid I can be. Like, I was telling the art skill, there's this book project I was really passionate about a couple of years ago. And even now, just a few years ago, I was like, I don't know if I can really get behind this anymore. And I don't know, maybe a few years from now, I'll move back or move into this totally opposite direction. I still don't view myself anywhere close to a finished product. I seem to be fluctuating in unknown directions, and who knows what I'm going to believe in 5 years. So that's the thing I no longer believe, that I will have a day when I'm big and strong and have it figured out. Now, if either of you are big and strong and have it figured out, you can chastise me. But your thoughts?
I love that. I am exactly where you are. I hope that I never think I have it figured out, because it's kind of like the further up and further in the Chronicles of Narnia, and also the way that Aslan seems bigger the older that you get. I feel like the only way we can really truly know God is to be open to what he's teaching us at any time. And anytime you say, I'm getting off the train because now I have it figured out, that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm kind of enjoying deciding to stop trying to figure certain things out, Like, I don't have to completely get things for them to be true. I can accept them and wonder.
No, I think that's a really good point, because there were some issues. There's like, wow, I need to think really hard and have a set answer on this. And there's some issues where that is true, but there are a lot of other issues like, my brain may just not be big enough for this answer, and that's okay.
Yeah, I can remember being intimidated by the verse in Hebrews. I never know the numbers, but about be always ready to give an answer for what you believe. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I have to explain the Trinity? No, that's not the point.
Flipping through your John McDowell book feverishly. Yeah.
That's so good. I was talking through my ideas for our topic tonight with my mom this morning, and I said something almost exactly like what I referenced that verse about giving an answer for what you believe. And that figures into one of my things I no longer believe.
Ooh, so let's segue right into it. So let's do it now. The segue is open. Okay. Let's go through the segue.
Okay. Here we are. So I no longer believe that people will see me following rules and be drawn to Jesus.
Ooh.
Okay, let's unpack that.
That is a good thing to not believe.
I don't know where it came from. Maybe my twisted brain like cobbled it together from churches of my youth, or maybe it was actually taught. I don't know. But there was always this, you are set apart. So you don't listen to secular music. You don't say cuss words. You don't go to the parties where there's going to be alcohol. And somehow that like lack of doing things was supposed to inspire people to want what you have.
Yep, I was there in college.
I have completely thrown that out with the garbage. I no longer believe any part of that. I think the truer thing to replace that with is they will know us by our love.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this too, because it's one of those things where looking back on it, you kind of see why this happened. I don't know if it happened. I don't think it was intentional, but when you're a teenager and you're in like the Christian world and you're in like the youth group world, I went to, a Christian school. You see the adults seem like, okay, guys, there's some stuff you really super can't do. Okay. So don't drink, don't have sex, don't, break the law. All right, cool. No drugs either. Oh, and so that was sort of like, okay, so that's what being a Christian means, is this stuff that all the cool kids do that I cannot do. There we go. And I don't think that was the leader's intent, but it's very easy for it to come across that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you notice something similar, Mandy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to throw a whole denomination under the bus or anything, but I went to a Southern Baptist church for a little while, and I mean, you can't, of course there's variation in between, but you can't even dance at some because, and my husband actually went to seminary and he went through some of this, and I guess it was in the early 20th century, the Southern Baptists actually did that that was their way of setting themselves apart. We need to make ourselves, it was almost puritanical, really. We need to make ourselves so different that, and I guess they thought it would draw worldly people to them. And I mean, purity is beautiful, but purity is beautiful for its own sake, not for a goal or a list, and grace and mercy is part of all of that. So, so I was there. Yeah, so I mean, I thought everything I didn't do.
Along those same lines, I think what I was doing in my immaturity and, trying to do the right thing, but kind of not understanding what I was doing, I was so the verse that talks about Christ is lifted up and men are drawn to him. I think that my mistake was I was lifting up the law and nobody was drawn to the law.
Right.
No, I can definitely see that with me too. Just you get in that mindset where it's like, okay, don't do all these things. I know these things look super fun, but don't do them because it's breaking the rule and they'll be bad. You'll be a bad person if you do it. And again, maybe without even meaning to, you've essentially told all the high schoolers or whoever, all right, guys, being a Christian is following a set of rules. And if you follow them, God will like you. It's like,
right. And
no, that's
you
not
also say, right. And you, like with your mouth, the other side of your mouth, you're like, but it's not a rule. It's a relationship.
Right.
Even though we believe that, here's the rules.
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing on that topic is about being prepared to have an answer for what you believe.
Right.
So my understanding of that has gone from like leaning towards apologetics and trying to logically convince people that what I believe is correct. I've thrown that all away and have decided that it's the word of our testimony that I am going to stick to. I'm going to say, I believe this because this has been my experience. And just kind of give up on logical persuasion for now. And who knows what I'll think in 5 years, but that is where I am right now.
That's a great place
I
to
know
be.
For me, there was a time in my life when I was like, in college or, a young adult where I cared a lot about researching this and, there's all these serious questions you need to wrestle with. Like, I remember going down to like this creek outside my college campus and just thinking so hard, like, okay, does God exist? Going through all the arguments, trying to view them like, okay, I think it was good that I went through that and spent some time wrestling with the complex things, the logic, the persuasion, the philosophy. But I'm not at that stage anymore where I don't feel, I feel like I've sort of done my thinking and made my decisions. And like you said, Teresa, more practically, like, when has anyone ever been either persuaded to or away from Christianity because of logical reasons? You'll see some people who claim that, and you'll see some people like the kid who grew up in the church who becomes an atheist because he took a psychology class in college. But that's what the kid says. But odds are there was something else going on, not strictly logical, and that he was kind of ready to leave and just look for an excuse. Like, I don't think people make those decisions based off of purely rational things most of the time, because people are not totally rational creatures. We do have a rational part, but we're also embodied beings with feelings and emotions and all these other things swirling around. So I think that we can reason people to the kingdom without any work from God in that is not something worth spending a whole lot of time on, I don't think.
Yeah. That
totally
seems wise.
So, Mandy, how about the second on your list now? What is the second thing you no longer believe?
Well, I don't think I knew I believed this, but I operated as if I did. So that artistic talent is almost like a superpower, like that some people have it and some people do not. So that's limiting in, obviously, if I thought I didn't have it, then I wouldn't even try, that's exactly what happened. So I didn't believe the people who told me I was talented. And I let that stop me from even pursuing anything. But then also, like, I wasn't leaving any room for development and learning and growth in that. So that's what I would say. So I don't think I articulated that anywhere in my brain, but I totally operated out of that system.
That makes sense. And I can see that sort of in the way I went about things in a couple ways. First of all, I think it's very easy to use that as an excuse to not work at it. It's like, okay, well, the gift, sometimes the gift will, and I'll write some stuff, but I shouldn't have to like slog at it. And second, I think it makes you take rejection more personally if you view it as sort of this gift that some people have, some people don't. It's like, whoa, they rejected this short story I sent them. They're rejecting me and my gift, Where
yes, absolutely.
Where I think, and I totally agree with you, Mandy, that this is sort of an inchoate thing. I think a lot of folks with the artistic ability think that yes, you have the ability, but you should still work hard you should still work at getting better. You should recognize you need to practice to get better, and not everything you do will be the best right away. In fact, you should look back at the work you wrote or, created years back and think, I've grown so much since then.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think also kind of tied into that, we think that talent looks the same. So like if I'm talented, I have to be talented like Evangeline. I love the way Evangeline writes. I don't write anything like what she writes. I would love to, but that's her voice. That's not my voice. And honestly, some of the artists that I admire the most are the ones who are doing something like completely out of nowhere. Like, there's a book called Wonderstruck that's like almost all pictures. I can't remember the author's name now, but I was like, how did this get published? This is not like anything else. Or The Book Thief. The way that book is put together breaks so many rules. And artists like our friend Chris, who paints on tea bags. Like, what? So I think thinking that talent is just sort of handed to you like a marble. I don't know where he came up with that, but like a gift, just like a thing, doesn't allow for variation in how it looks to the world too.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Well, actually, I accidentally started talking about one of my points as I was discussing your point. So I'll just say that point now. So, So my next one is I now think I've gotten better at taking rejection lightly.
Oh, good.
I can be a very thin-skinned person. I think a lot of folks who are into the arts and creating art feel that same way. But I remember when I was first I remember when I was first getting going with this, the thought of sharing like a pitch to write something or, a book proposal would just terrify me because I had this thought like, okay, if they dislike this one thing I sent, this means they dislike me. And that means everything I'm doing is like meaningless and it's all worthless. And then you just go down this spiral that ends with you like eating ice cream at 2 a.m. watching Simpsons reruns.
Yes.
So I'm still not there, but I do think I've gotten better over the years is to think, okay, this one idea that I have, it's not me, it's one thing. So if I send, a book idea to a friend and they don't like it, they're not rejecting me, it's this one idea. Or if I pitch an article to this magazine and they pass on it, it's not me, it's one idea I happen to have. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe it's just not what they needed right now. Maybe, there's all sorts of stuff. There's no sense in dwelling on it, so you may as well just shake it off and keep doing your thing, he tells himself, not knowing if he totally believes it yet.
Yeah.
But, so for you two, I'm guessing, because this happens to every artist, that you've had to face rejection. So what are your strategies?
Cry. No. Well, there is that. Well, the cool thing now is I have an agent and she only sends me the rejection letters that say nice things, even though they're rejections. But before that, no, it's true. Like, she'll be like, look how much they liked it. And I'm like, okay, but they still didn't take it. But yes, okay, they liked it. But, I often talk about how my first novel is never going to see the light of day. I tried to get an agent with that novel and failed miserably. And one of them actually said, there is no reason for this story to exist. So I would say that was the hardest rejection. And I stopped writing for a little while, but fortunately a lot of my writing friends were like, she's a really bad agent, obviously, because you don't say that to people.
Yeah.
Of course, in retrospect, I'm like, I kind of see her point. So, for me, I don't know. That's a hard question. It depends on the day. How about you, Teresa? I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm thinking back to, like, I was right out of high school. So I don't know if you guys had this where you were, but there was a thing called Music with the Purpose. And it was like I guess a yearly vocal competition that like the local churches participated in. And like I won them. I would always win them in high school. Of course. So I was like, yay. I rock, I'm the best. And then I went to this, like out of 8 people, yay. Then I went to this real competition. It was called YMCA in the Rockies. And it was like a legitimate singing competition and with like a recording contract as the final prize. And it was sort of like almost like a fleece I was putting out. Like, is it time for me to grow up and finish college and, start my family and be a real, grown up? Or am I going to have this magical success thing with music? So I entered into the contest and didn't even make round 2. Like, nothing.
Oh, ouch.
And, that it took like 10 years after that before I was like, maybe I can really be a musician. Isn't that a horrible, awful story? But yeah, yes. I mean, finally after that, I was like, maybe they weren't right. Maybe that doesn't have to define my whole life just because those one people didn't like me better than the other people. It was a good reality check because, especially in music, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just because I'm an indie musician, right? So nobody tells me that song's not good enough. I just put it out there. People like it or people don't like it. So I feel like they're like, I give birth to these songs and then they're like my children and then they go out in the world and do whatever work they're supposed to do. And it's kind of hands off at that point for me. Right. So I take less ownership in, the work than I used to.
Well, and it's so important to have a community. Sorry, Matt, but like Anselm.
No, go for it.
Anselm Arts Guild is a way that I handle rejection. Especially because Evangeline is always telling me how stupid whoever rejected me is. That's always helpful. You have to have a friend who tells you other people are stupid.
That is super, super good point. Definitely.
It is. You gotta have somebody.
Maybe that's the best takeaway from this thing.
It is.
Find someone who will call all the publishers stupid. All right.
Yes.
So,
that's my strategy.
So, Teresa, we're winding down a little, so I think we have time for one more apiece if we do kind of rapid fire version. So what's your rapid fire thing?
I wrote this quote from Madeleine L'Engle from her book, Walking on Water, and it's, There is nothing so secular that it cannot be sacred. And that is one of the deepest messages of the incarnation. And reading that and hearing that really changed my idea on art. I remember in high school, like, feeling guilty listening to U2 because they weren't Christian. You know,
right.
Now I think of things, I was like, what were you thinking? How narrow were you that you couldn't see God in places that didn't have that label?
Yeah, that was actually one of my things. I said I used to think there was a clear line between the sacred and profane. But like St. Augustine says, all truth is God's truth. And you can obviously abuse that, but you have to trust the Holy Spirit in you to be able to handle, you know, dark stories, monster stories, as Heidi White would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I see this even, you know, just today, just casually, I'll be reading a book I enjoy and be thinking, you know, Matt, you should be reading your Bible. It's like, oh, So it's easy to fall into that without even necessarily meaning to, but yeah, I definitely appreciate that point. So Mandy, your rapid fire.
My rapid fire, I think I tend to operate as if God wants me to do this, it's going to quote unquote work. And of course, what that means is contracts and money. And so I'm really starting to understand that, and I credit Lancia Smith with this a lot. I don't have to have a specific, I don't know, defined whatever success looks like. I'm writing because he told me to write. I don't know where what I'm writing is going to end up. Obviously, I would love to publish a book because I do want people to know my characters and because I like them. So, I mean, obviously, I have that hope, but that can't be, I guess, it's not always going to be the end result. And that doesn't mean it was a waste of time to do it in the first place. And that doesn't mean God didn't call me to write if I'm not selling everything or half or however much of what I'm writing.
So
he still told me to do it.
Our last Anselm Artists Guild meeting, like we talked about that exact thing. You weren't there, were you, Mandy?
No, I was at a really awesome wedding. Yay. Anyway,
but it's like you were there because you already know that.
Oh.
But yeah, I think that is it is, because I think there is a pressure for those of us, I think that's most of us, who want to like justify the work we put into our art. Like, okay, I'm doing this so that, you know, it'll make money, people pay attention to me, I'll get a platform. And it's very easy to think that those are the goals, but they're not. You know, they happen to some people, and that's what I'm trying to get myself with these next projects, because, you know, the book project, this is also something we talked about the last Anselm meeting. The book project I thought I had for a while, I decided to back away from. So there's a part of me that's like, oh, did I just waste all that time and work doing that? I could have done stuff that's successful, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, well, first of all, I don't think it was wasted time. It didn't end up in a book right now, but maybe that work I spent will pay dividends later. And second, even if I don't, you know, quote unquote, make it, there's still valuable to create this art. There's other purposes for it, if nothing else, for my personal formation or the formation of people who do encounter it. So we shouldn't fall into that way of thinking that, okay, well, I need to succeed by all these, you know, usual standards, or else it's a waste.
Even the book that supposedly has no reason to exist, my first one, it does have a reason to exist, because I totally learned so many things. First of all, I learned I could write an entire novel, even though it stunk. I learned a lot of what not to do. I learned how to build characters. It was practice. And that sounds like a lame thing to say, but no, I really needed that experience. And honestly, I still like those characters. So I could use them and actually give them a plot worth telling in the future.
And you have no way of knowing who is hearing it. I mean, it's just possible that one of the people that read that book, one of the sentences in that book, even the one that didn't get published, made a connection for them in their brain, and God used that to touch their heart in some way, and you will never know that this side of eternity.
Wow.
And what if that was the purpose for that book? I mean,
There you
I just
go.
feel like there's so much that we don't know. Like having to have quantifiable returns is an exercise. Well, it can be an exercise in futility. And then also it turns you so much to thinking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah, and you can use it to justify so much stuff that you don't need to. You know, think about all the compromises you could make to increase your platform, you know? Because there are a lot of slightly sketchy ways to increase your platform, but like taking shots at other people, you know, taking a strong, rigid stance that you know will turn a lot of people off. Thinking, well, I need to do this to be successful, to enhance my platform. And it's like, that's not an end in and of itself.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end. And if y'all are thinking, whoa, Matt didn't share his last one, it's like, well, I mean, that's the way the cookie crumbles,
is what I was
guess.
thinking.
But we're out of time. But
we didn't rapid fire enough.
If you're thinking, did Matt do that on purpose? Maybe. I don't know. It's, you know, whatever. But anyway, thank you both so much. Teresa, thank you for suggesting this as a topic. And Mandy, thank you for joining us. Thought this was really fun.
You're so welcome. Yeah, it was so fun.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was great.
And now, as always, let's close things up with a quotation from St. Anselm. God does not delay to hear our prayers because he has no mind to give, but that, by enlarging our desires, he may give us the more largely. Till next time, everybody.